So there's a question I asked last week, and now I'm asking it again. Does Pitt need a quarterback this offseason? Does Pitt need a transfer quarterback this offseason? And did the last two games change your answer to that question and your opinion about what it should be? We're going to talk about the quarterback situation, what Pitt needs to do this offseason on today's Morning Pitt here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. All right, it's the Tuesday edition of the Morning Pitt, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. The dust has settled on the offensive coordinator firing, but the change is still very much happening. Pat Narduzzi looking to make a hire. We think he should make it sooner rather than later, but we also thought he probably should have made the move to move on from Frank Cignetti sooner rather than later. So, we'll see when it actually plays out. Plenty of time to talk about that. We got a lot of conversation to have this morning, or a lot of topics to cover. Or one big topic to cover, I guess I should say. It's not like we have 10 things to talk about. We've got like one or two things to talk about, but they're big topics here on the Morning Pitt. So you know what we always ask you to do? Like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. That way you never miss any of our Pitt video content, whether it's post-game press conferences or midweek press conferences or these Morning Pitt videos every day of the week, Monday through Friday. Our weekly live show that we do every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Me and Jim Hammock get together and talk with you about Pitt sports. We'll be doing that tomorrow night to talk about Pitt hoops, talk about the offensive coordinator change, talk about what's going to happen moving forward. Of course, we also have post-game shows. The football post-game shows are done, but we will get some basketball post-game shows going here right quick. Coming up in the near future. Still planning those out, but we're going to do them, and they'll probably be just as much fun as the football ones. Win or lose, it's always fun to sit down and have those conversations, and we appreciate you guys being a part of that. So like this video and subscribe, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, and then of course the website Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting. Everything you need is right there. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. All right, the quarterback question. And I asked the question kind of along these lines in the 3-2-1 column on Friday. You know the format for the 3-2-1 column that we publish on Panther-Lair.com. It's 3 things we know, 2 questions we have, and 1 prediction. Fortunately, my prediction was not tied to the Duke game, unless I predicted them to lose, but I didn't. And my prediction had to do with basketball and the basketball team continuing to go 9 deep. I still think that's a pretty likely scenario. We'll see how it plays out. My prediction had nothing, that was about basketball, had nothing to do with football. But there was one, there were several sections that were about football, and one that was specifically related to the game, the Duke game, the season finale on Saturday at Duke. And the question was, how much will that game impact your thoughts on Pitt's quarterback situation? Because look, I think, I'm of the opinion, I think by mid-season, if not earlier, and certainly no later than probably the start of November, there was a pretty strong sentiment that Pitt needed to go get another quarterback out of the transfer portal. And whether that sentiment was held by Pat Narduzzi, whether it was held by Frank Cignetti, probably not Frank Cignetti, who's not here anymore, so it doesn't matter. Maybe or maybe not held by the rest of the staff, I think there was a feeling around Pitt, maybe in part of the fan base and maybe in part of the people who would, have some influence on what the staff does or be in communication with the staff. I think there was a feeling that they did need to go get a new starting quarterback out of the transfer portal to get someone to come in and start in 2024. And I think, I don't think there was back channel communication, but I think there was, your eyes are always open, I guess would be the way I would put it. Your eyes are always open for potential players who are going to enter the portal. And I think coaches often have a good sense of who's going to go into the portal. I think coaches often have an idea of who might go and who might be available and who might be able to fill some of the needs, so that you don't necessarily need to go start those conversations early. You can wait and play by the rules, but at least you know who you're looking for and you're ready to recruit them and target them if and when they do come available. And I think there were eyes on quarterback possibilities and options at the quarterback position. Because if you think about it, after 5 games of Phil Dracovic and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games of Christian Veer, you can see why Pitt might think they need a new quarterback for 2024. But then Nate Yarnell happened. And he came in his first start, I should say, the Boston College game, went 11 of 19 for 207 and a touchdown. Not exactly a stellar stat line, but a pretty strong performance overall. And, just generally looked good. Looked good throwing the ball, looked good getting the ball to his receivers, looked good avoiding pressure, looked good, just looked good. I think he played really well in that game. Even though his stat line, 11 of 19 for 207, is pretty much the kind of stat line that Veyer would put up, or maybe even Djokovic on his best day. And then he goes to Duke for the finale, 25 of 35, 265, 2 touchdowns and a pick. The interception, not good. Looked like he just threw it to the defender right in the end zone, but it's pretty clear that Kenny Johnson got picked on that play by the referee and kind of broke up his route. And, Yarnell was sort of in a tough spot. He had already thrown the ball. Didn't really have time to take that one back. But he goes on his record as a mistake. And I think I came out of that game thinking, wait, he might be pretty good. Like maybe Pitt found their starting quarterback. And this was what I wondered about going into that game. It's what I wondered about going into the Boston College game, to be quite honest. When it became clear that they were going to change the starting quarterbacks and go with Nate Yarnell, I started to wonder, how is this going to affect what they do in the offseason, what they do with the transfer portal? Because if Yarnell goes out there and plays really well, does that change what they feel like they need from the portal? And then there's a question of how much would constitute really well? How much would justify, changing that approach? How good would he have to do? I mean, obviously if he goes out and throws for 350 and 3 touchdowns and leads them to 2 wins, then that's a pretty easy case to make. But, he ended up well short of that in some kind of middle ground where he wasn't terrible, but he wasn't great. So how good was he? And I think there's a few things to look at. I mean, I think you look at the completion percentage, 11 and 19, 25 of 35 is pretty good. I think you can look over 3 starts, right? Because he started 3 games for Pitt. Pitt is 2-1 in those 3 games. And in those 3 games, he completed 68% of his passes, 68.2% of his passes for 651 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 1 interception. That's what he did in 3 starts. The Western Michigan game in 2022, and then Boston College and Duke this year. If you take, and this is not perfect, and I know that, and you have to take a lot of caveats with this, but just to put some raw numbers out there, if you take those numbers from his 3 starts, just the starts, never mind when he came in and replaced Christian Veyer at Notre Dame or replaced him against Syracuse, just take the 3 starts: Western Michigan, Boston College, Duke. You take those numbers, 45 of 66 for 651, 4 touchdowns and 1 pick. You project them over, you take that pace and project it over 12 games, and you end up with, obviously still a 68% completion percentage, 2,604 yards, 2,600 yards, 16 touchdowns and 4 picks. Not great. Not great. Not an awe-inspiring season. Potential to get closer to 20 touchdowns, with a bowl game. And, quite honestly, 16 passing touchdowns is less than, Pitt has thrown any year under Pat Narduzzi. So, I'm sorry. It's not. I was looking at the wrong column. This year, Pitt had 17 passing touchdowns. 2019, the worst year, the least productive year of the Narduzzi era, they had 17 passing touchdowns. 2017 and 18, 12 passing touchdowns. 2020, 14 passing touchdowns. Last year, 22, 13 passing touchdowns. So if Nate Yarnell were to take the pace that he played at over the course of his 3 starts and did that over 12 games, it wouldn't be Kenny Pickett level in terms of passing touchdowns. It wouldn't be, Nate Peterman level in terms of passing touchdowns, or, either Nate Peterman's years, 2015 or 16. And it would fall a little bit short of what they ended up with last year, but it would still be better than a number of years in the Narduzzi era. And maybe we're comparing it against the wrong thing, but here's my point. All right. If you take just the pace that Nate Yarnell was on over those 3 starts, one of those games being a very watered down playbook that they used out at Western Michigan and not too much more open in the game at against Boston College. But if you take that and project it over 12 games, he throws for 16 touchdowns and 4 picks. He throws for 2,600 yards. That's pretty solid production. Not great, but solid. Not making a lot of mistakes. And I think if you have a more wide open playbook, the Duke game, 25 of 35 for 265 and 2 touchdowns. If that's what you can get, even something approaching that, you're going to end up with more than 16 touchdowns. You're probably going to clear 20. So I guess what I'm saying is I think his performance in 3 starts has been pretty encouraging. Is it encouraging enough that you're going to put all your eggs in that basket for next season? And that's really the biggest question that Pat Narduzzi has to answer. The eye test, watching Nate Yarnell over 2 games, just kind of judging him based on these last 2, he seemed to be more comfortable in the offense than either of his predecessors. He was more comfortable finding receivers and getting the ball to them than Phil Dracovic, and he did a better job taking care of the ball and protecting the ball and not turning it over than Christian Veer. I think Veer has the best arm of the group, but I think Yarnell's arm is good enough. I think he made sharp passes. I think he could put zip on it when he needed to put zip on it. I think he could float it when he needed to float it. It wasn't perfect, and I'm not going to claim that it was, but I think for his first 2 starts of the season, his second and third career starts, I think he looked pretty good. I tell you what stat I really liked. I found this one on Pro Football Focus. We'll keep coming back. Like every few minutes, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk about something about Nate Yarnell for a few minutes, and then I'm going to come back and ask that question again. Did he do enough to secure the job for 2024 and potentially change Pitt's approach to the transfer portal this offseason? So I'll keep bouncing back and forth. Talk about a Yarnell thing and then ask that question. Talk about a Yarnell thing and ask that question. So I talked about his pace for 12 games. I'll talk about it, and then I asked the question, and now I'll talk about something else. Play action. All right, and I found this on Pro Football Focus. They track this stuff, and we're going to trust their numbers. I know you might not trust their grades, and that's fine. I'm not going to use their grades, but I'm going to go by some of their data. I think sort of quantifiable data, not qualifiable, quantifiable data, very objective data, like play action. You and I can watch a game, and if we write it all down, we can track how many times he dropped back and ran play action, how many times he threw it, how many times he threw it away, how many times he scrambled, how many passes he completed, how many yards, and all that. We can track that stuff. That's quantifiable, and so I'm going to trust Pro Football Focus when it comes to that. According to Pro Football Focus, this season Nate Yarnell dropped back and ran play action 17 times. Not a ton. It's a small sample size, but it's what we've got, right? He played in 4 games this season, I think. Is that right? Let me just bring that up real quick. 4 games this season. Played Notre Dame, Syracuse, Boston College, Duke. In those 4 games, 17 times he dropped back and ran play action. 2 of those 17 he scrambled. The other 15, he threw passes. 2 of them were throwaways. Just threw it away, didn't have what he liked, but he threw it away. Either way, of his 15 passes on play action, he completed 11. That's 73% completions. For 256 yards, that's 17 yards per attempt. Not per completion. 17 yards per attempt and 2 touchdowns. And Pro Football Focus does this adjusted completion percentage. We talked about this a lot when Pitt was dropping a lot of passes. We just talked about Kenny Pickett's adjusted completion percentage, where it's a completion percentage that removes drops and throwaways and spikes from the quarterback's attempts and completions and completion percentage. So if you take out the 2 throwaways, so instead of going 11 of 15, he goes 11 of 13 on passes where he actually attempted to hit a receiver. That's 85%. 84.6. Now, small sample size, 17 dropbacks. We're not going to herald, Nate Yarnell as the greatest play action passer in history, but he was really damn good. He was really, really good on play action. 73% completion, 17.1 yards per attempt, 2 touchdowns. We all know Pat Narduzzi's not going to completely abandon his beliefs in the game of football when it comes to running offense, right? We all know he's not going to completely get away from the idea that you need to run the ball to win games. And that's fine. I think there's some truth to it. And you can win a lot of games if you can run the ball well. One of the key things that has to happen, though, is if you can establish the run, you've got to be able to capitalize by running play action. It's got to be a big part of your offense. And I was surprised it wasn't a bigger part of Pitt's offense this year. But then I looked at some of the numbers. Christian Veyer and Phil Dracovic were both sub 60% on play action attempts. Sub 60%. Now, Yarnell, small sample size. But Yarnell was actually better, completed a higher percentage of his play action pass attempts than Kenny Pickett did in 2021. Sample size. Big sample size difference. And I can't state that enough. But what I will say, it may only be 17 dropbacks. It may only be 15 in pass attempts. But he pretty much passed the test. Whenever they asked him to drop back, he did some really good stuff. I think he had 11 completions, 10 of them gained a first down or a touchdown on those play action passes. I mean, it was really, really good. And part of it was, Pitt ran the ball better against Boston College, so that probably helped his numbers against BC and Duke. But part of it might just be that he's good at running it, that he's good at faking the handoff, at finding his receiver and making a good throw for his receiver to catch. The touchdown play to Bub Means. I mean, I'm jumping around here. I don't think it was play action. The touchdown pass to Bub Means in the Duke game, but that was an outstanding play. Dropping back, scrambling, keeping his eyes downfield, and finding the open receiver. He can run a little bit. I don't think all of the designed runs and keepers and even read plays were always a great idea. And sometimes he was able to make something out of nothing, and sometimes he was able to make nothing out of nothing. But he could run a little bit. He could keep the play alive and extend it. I would rather see him running to extend a play rather than quite as many designed runs as they had him do in the Duke game. But that's beside the point. The new offensive coordinator decide what he wants to do with him. But I think the point that I was making about the play action passes and the small sample size is the point I would make about Nate Yarnell overall. Like, to this point, he has pretty much done everything he's been asked of him. Whether it was the Western Michigan game where he was 9 of 12 for 179 and a touchdown, or as the playbook expanded for him in these last two starts, and he was able to go out and really run the offense, and the improvement that you saw and how well he played. And sure, one of those games went for a loss, so he obviously didn't play well enough to win. But the question is, did he play well enough to secure himself the starting job next year? And look, it's an open competition in spring camp and all of that. So let's not even say did he play well enough to secure the starting job next year, but did he play well enough to convince you that they don't need to go get a starting quarterback out of the transfer portal? And I don't know. I don't have an answer to the question. I really don't. I don't know. I need someone smarter than me to evaluate it. And ultimately, it's going to come down to whether Pat Narduzzi believes this is the quarterback for him as he moves into a very, very important season. Of course, the new offensive coordinator is going to have something to say about it as well. The new offensive coordinator is going to have to come in as soon as possible and start watching film and decide, is Nate Yarnell my guy? Now, they may still decide to go out and try and add a transfer who can help the depth of the room, help the overall talent of the room. But I think the prospect of 2024 seeing Pitt ride with a quarterback room that is Nate Yarnell, Christian Veyer, Ty Diefenbach, and Julian Duggar, I think that likelihood is far greater now than it was 3 weeks ago. For a number of reasons. For one, from the way Yarnell played over the last two games, and then the decision to remove Cignetti. Because I don't think Frank Cignetti really believed in Nate Yarnell. And that was probably part of the reason that there was never any change made until Pat Narduzzi kind of pushed for it. But now Frank Cignetti's not here. And now Nate Yarnell has put 2 games of tape out there this season with pretty much a full playbook. So what do you think? Is Nate Yarnell your guy? Is he your quarterback one for 2024? I'm more like I said, I don't have the answer to this. I don't know, but I'm more open to it now than I was 3 weeks ago. And that probably wasn't fair to Nate Yarnell 3 weeks ago because I didn't have much to base that on, but I kind of based it on the fact that I didn't have much to base it on. So we'll see. We'll see what they do. Like I say, the graduate transfers can enter the portal now. Tyler Van Dyke went in yesterday. I don't think Pitt should go down that road unless they want to bring him in to be a backup. But then the portal for undergrads opens on Monday. And so we're really going to see quarterbacks flood the portal as they always do, and we'll find out about Pitt's intentions pretty quickly. I think we'll get an idea pretty quickly about what Pitt intends to do at the quarterback position for 2024. All right. Let me know your thoughts in the comments and here on the message boards. What you think Pitt should do at quarterback, whether you are sold on Nate Yarnell, whether you believe he can be the starting quarterback for next season. I'd like to hear from you right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com or on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll be back tomorrow. Oh, don't forget the Pitt basketball game tonight. Panthers take on Missouri, the Peterson Event Center. Looking forward to that one. 7:30 tip-off, a little bit of a different time. We'll have a Morning Pitt tomorrow talking about that game and everything else going on in the world of Pitt sports. So make sure you tune in for that and stay tuned right there to Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com. All right, thanks so much for tuning in today. We appreciate it. Enjoy the basketball game tonight, and we will talk to you tomorrow on the Morning Pitt right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.